You've already cut out the obvious stuff. No soda, no greasy takeout, no late-night eating. And yet, you still wake up at 2 a.m. with that burning sensation crawling up your chest. So what's going wrong? Here's what nobody tells you. Some of the foods you think are completely fine, foods that are even recommended as healthy, are quietly making your acid reflux worse every single day. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which ones they are, why they're causing the problem, and what to eat instead. Stay with me, because a couple of these are going to genuinely surprise you. Setup. The biology in 60 seconds before we get into the list. You need to understand one thing, because once you do, everything else makes sense. At the bottom of your esophagus, there's a small muscular valve called the lower esophageal sphincter. Its only job is to stay shut after you eat so that stomach acid stays where it belongs, in your stomach. In people with GERD, that valve is weak. It opens when it shouldn't. And when it does, acid travels upward and burns the lining of your esophagus. That's the heartburn you feel. Now here's where it gets interesting. 2 things make that valve fail. It either relaxes too easily or your stomach holds onto food for too long, building up pressure until something gives way. Every food on this list triggers one of those 2 problems. Some trigger both. Category 1, citrus fruits. Let's start with something most people already suspect, but don't fully understand. Citrus fruits like oranges, lemons, and limes are highly acidic. And when you're already dealing with excess acid trying to escape into your esophagus, adding more acid from your food is only going to make things worse. The fix is simple. Swap citrus for non-citrus fruits. Apples, pears, melons, these are far gentler options that won't aggravate an already irritated system. Category 2, caffeine. Here's one that stings a little. Caffeine in your morning coffee, your afternoon tea, your energy drink directly causes that valve we talked about to relax. Not because you're stressed, not because of how much you drink. The compound itself triggers the relaxation mechanism. So every sip is quietly working against you. But wait, it gets worse. Pattern interrupt. Chocolate, because chocolate does the same thing. And before you say, I knew it, the reason is more complicated than you'd think. Yes, chocolate contains caffeine. But it also contains something called theobromine. And on top of that, the cocoa itself triggers a serotonin release in your gut lining. And serotonin is another signal that tells your lower esophageal sphincter to loosen up. So chocolate isn't just one strike against your reflux. It's 3, hitting 3 separate biological pathways at the same time. Both milk and dark chocolate. Neither one gets a pass here. Category 3, spicy foods. This one most people already know, but the reason behind it is worth understanding. The heat in spicy food comes from a compound called capsaicin. And capsaicin doesn't just irritate your mouth. It actually slows down the rate at which your stomach processes food, what doctors call delayed gastric emptying. The longer food sits in your stomach, the more pressure builds up, and the greater the chance that acid gets pushed upward. Hot sauces, red chili peppers, spicy seasonings. If your reflux flares after eating them, now you know exactly why. Category 4, fried and high-fat foods. Here's something a lot of people don't connect. It's not just the grease that's the problem, it's the digestion timeline. Fatty foods take significantly longer to break down. That means they sit in your stomach far longer than lean foods do. And the longer anything sits in your stomach, the higher the risk of acid escaping upward. Fast food, fried chicken, full-fat cheeses, processed snacks like chips, bacon, and deli meats. They're all in this category. The fat content alone is enough to delay gastric emptying and keep your reflux active for hours after a meal. Pattern interrupt. The pizza problem. Let's talk about pizza for a second, because pizza is a perfect storm. Tomatoes are already acidic on their own. They contain both citric acid and malic acid, which directly worsen acid reflux. Now add cheese, which is high in fat, which delays gastric emptying. Then add a refined carb base that digests quickly and spikes stomach activity. Pizza hits multiple triggers in a single meal. If you've ever wondered why reflux is especially brutal after pizza night, that's your answer. The same logic applies to tomato-based sauces in general. Pasta sauce, marinara, shakshuka, all worth minimizing if your symptoms are frequent. Category 5, raw onions. This one catches people off guard. Raw onions, not cooked, specifically raw, have been shown to relax the lower esophageal sphincter. But there's a second mechanism that makes them even more problematic. Onions contain fermentable fiber, which causes gas buildup in the stomach. That gas has to go somewhere, and when it does, as a belch, it forces the valve open, sending acid right up into the esophagus. If you love onions, cooking them thoroughly breaks down much of the fermentable fiber and reduces the effect significantly. Raw onions on salads or sandwiches, though, are a quiet reflux trigger most people never identify. Category 6. Mint. This one is genuinely counterintuitive, and it's probably the most surprising item on this list. Mint feels cooling. It feels soothing. A lot of people reach for peppermint tea after a heavy meal thinking it'll help settle their stomach. But for people with GERD, mint actually does the opposite. It directly irritates the esophageal lining. Peppermint, spearmint, peppermint tea, and even mint-flavored toothpaste can all contribute to worsened symptoms. If you've been ending every meal with a cup of mint tea wondering why your reflux doesn't improve, you've just found your culprit. Category 7. Salt. This one comes with an asterisk, but it's still worth knowing. High salt intake, specifically adding extra salt to your food, has been associated with worsened GERD symptoms. Now, researchers aren't entirely sure whether the salt itself is the problem, or whether it's simply a marker for the kinds of foods people tend to salt heavily: fried foods, processed meats, fast food. The correlation is strong, but the causation is still being studied. Either way, if you're regularly reaching for the salt shaker, it's at minimum a signal that your overall dietary pattern might be working against your reflux. Beverages. Alcohol now. Let's talk about what you're drinking, because beverages are often where people have the biggest blind spots. Alcohol is one of the most damaging things you can consume if you have GERD, and not just because of the relaxation effect on the lower esophageal sphincter. Alcohol actively damages the mucosal lining of both the stomach and the esophagus over time. Beer, wine, cocktails, the type doesn't matter as much as the effect. Beverages, carbonated drinks, and then there's the carbonation problem, which applies even to drinks that seem innocent. When you drink a carbonated beverage, the gas expands inside your stomach. That expansion creates internal pressure. That pressure pushes against the lower esophageal sphincter. And just like squeezing a tube of toothpaste, something comes out, in this case, acid. Sodas, sparkling water, carbonated mixers, all of them cause that pressure buildup. And beer. Beer is both alcoholic and carbonated, which means it's doing double damage every single time. Closing strong, ending so. Here's the pattern you should be seeing. Almost everything on this list either relaxes that valve, delays how fast your stomach empties, adds acid directly, or does more than one of those things simultaneously. The most surprising offenders: mint, raw onions, and the chocolate you might be eating thinking it's a relatively harmless treat. The goal isn't to make every meal miserable. It's to understand why certain foods cause problems so you can make smarter swaps, instead of just suffering through symptoms you don't have to live with. If you want to go deeper, I've covered which foods trigger the same kinds of issues in irritable bowel syndrome. That video is linked and worth watching if digestive health is something you're actively working on. If this helped you, a like and subscribe goes a long way, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next.